What's up, guys? Hopefully all of you are doing well. Today I'm going to show you how to make a very flaky pie crust you can use for your peach cobblers, your homemade pies, and even those small empanadas. I'm also going to show you guys how to make it with the food processor, and for those of you who don't have one, you'll be fine doing it by hand. Let's get started. For this pie crust, the ingredients are simple. I have some cold butter, some cold shortening, sugar, salt, and ice cold water. And the flour we've already gotten to the food processor. We're just going to add all of the dry ingredients right to the processor, and we're just going to pulse it a few times just to get everything mixed. Child, I don't know what I was thinking putting that parchment paper up under there. You see I moved it, right? So moving on to the cold butter and the cold shortening. We're just going to pulsate that until they look like peas right in the flour. When you're making pie crust and you hear us reference the size of peas of the butter and the shortening and the flour, we're just referencing the size. You should have a crumply looking flour like this. That's what you want. This recipe will give you 2 10-inch pie crusts, and don't forget, for this recipe, check out gdseasoning.com. The link will be below in the description. Next, what we need to do is pulse the food processor as we slowly drizzle in the ice water. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm getting 2 more tablespoons of ice water because I only started off with 10. You actually need 12, and that's going to make all of the difference because what we need is the dough to start to turn itself into a ball right into the machine, and you'll see that in just a second. Now here's the trick to this. Once you see the dough start to form the ball, just even slightly, you can stop. Don't keep going. You don't need to. Go ahead and stop. Get your floured surface ready, and then dump your dough right onto that floured surface. Be careful of the blade. These blades and these processors are super sharp. Alright, so what we want to do is bring this dough together fairly quickly because all of the ingredients we have in there are very cold. Remember, the butter, the shortening, and all of that is very cold. Well, your hands are not. Your body heat is naturally warm. So you touching that dough too much can warm up the dough and you can bring the temperature down. So just bring it together as quickly as possible, and then we're going to cover it with some saran. I'm using a chilled cutting board. As you can see, I put that in the refrigerator. You can go directly on your countertops because your countertops tend to be cooler anyway. You know, just make sure you clean them down and wash the countertops down really good. It shouldn't be a problem, right? Okay. Now that the dough has come together and we have a nice disc or something close to a disc, you don't want it to be too big of a ball. Go ahead and put it in the refrigerator to rest for at least 30 minutes. This happened to be overnight though in my case. Alright, now it's time to roll out the dough. I'm going to show you up close. See that shortening right in there? You can see we didn't overwork the dough because we still can see the pieces of butter and shortening. The actual recipe calls for butter flavored shortening, but it was 9 o'clock when I did this. I was not leaving my house, so I used what I had. But that was a good example to show you up close what the butter and the shortening will do. Now what's going to happen is when we cook it, those little bits melt and create air pockets. That's how you get a flaky pie crust. So there's a method to the madness that everybody needs to understand. What I'm doing here is I'm just going to turn it in sort of a small ball, and I'm just going to roll it out and create my pie crust. Here's another tip for the brand new cooks, or those of you who are going to be attempting this for the first time. You do need to pick that pie crust up or that dough and make sure it's not sticking to the board as you roll. So pick it up once in a while, make sure you got plenty of flour up under there, and then put it back down and continue to roll. Now once we've got the pie crust rolled out to about 10.5 inches in diameter, I'm just going to make sure it's not sticking to my cutting board still, and it's not, and I'm going to fold it in half and then half again, just so it'll be easier for me to lay it in my pie pan. Now, of course, I recommend this pie crust because it's mine and it's really good, and it feels really good when you touch it. I like the way it feels. What some people do at this point is they tend to cut the edges, and that's fine, but you do want to stay on the outer edge of the pie dish. Don't cut it too short because pie crusts shrink a little bit. So because I know my people like crust, I usually just tuck them under like that, and then I just make little small finger designs. You can use your fingers, you can use a fork, whatever works for you is fine with me. And I'm just going to do that all the way around, and your pie crust is ready. Now for those of you who want to use the pie crust for other purposes, you can go ahead and roll them out and use them for anything you want really. Here I'm just showing you how to take a 4-inch round, or it can be a slightly bigger if you like, and I'm making some candy yam empanadas. This is where you would take those leftover candy yams from the holidays, maybe the next day after everybody has eaten, put them in some pie crust like this and make small little empanadas, little pies, if you will. You can stick anything in there, apples, berries, whatever you come up with, you can do that. I'm just going to fold them in half, and I use a fork to seal both sides. That way they won't pop open when you cook them. We'll be able to check those out at the end of the video, so stay tuned. Now, for those of you who don't have a food processor, here's how you make your pie crust by hand. Yes, it is some work involved, but you can do it. Here we go. Okay, as usual, you're going to wash your hands really good first because your hands are going to be directly involved with the butter, the shortening, and the flour. We're going to put our ice cold butter and shortening right into the flour, and the sugar and the salt is already in there too. And we're going to coat all of the butter and shortening with the flour, and then you're going to start to work and squeeze that butter and shortening between your fingers and that flour to get it to the size of peas. Remember? Now, to make this part of the process a little easier on yourself when you're doing pie crust by hand, you could buy a pastry cutter, and that'll help you work the shortening and butter into the flour a little easier, but I'm going to leave that up to you. The next thing I'm going to do is clean, rinse, and sanitize, and then dry my countertops because I want to be ready as soon as that dough starts to come together. Once I add the cold water, I want to be able to turn out my dough immediately onto the countertop. So let's add our cold ice water, and you'll see that dough start to come together as I slowly add it. By the way, this is a half recipe too. The other recipe we just made was the regular recipe, which will give us 2 pie crusts, and this one is only going to give us 1 10-inch pie crust. If you want to know how to cut recipes in half, I have a video on that, and it'll be linked down below. As you can see, the process is very closely related whether you're going to use a food processor or you're going to do it by hand. You just have to decide which one works better for you. If you're interested in the Pyrex bowl that I'm using, that pretty watercolor bowl, that's from Pyrex. It's their watercolor collection. I'm going to link it online. I just bought it yesterday at the Corningware store and I love it already. I'll share that link with you guys down below. So you can see the process is virtually the same whether you do it by hand or if you have use of a food processor. Quickly, let's go back to those little candy yam empanadas that I made. I'm just going to brush each one of them with some egg wash. I stuck them in the oven at 375 degrees and cooked them up until they were golden brown, but you can definitely see how flaky this pie crust is. Now, I know after we've done all this, someone is going to watch this video and say, I am not up to the task. What do you recommend I buy in the store? Here it is. Marie Callender's deep dish pie crust found in the freezer section of your grocery store. At Trader Joe's, you can get their store name brand pie crust right in the freezer section. And finally, Pillsbury pie crust found in the refrigerated section of your grocery store. All of these have worked for me at one point in time or another, and I ain't ashamed to tell you. Thank you guys for coming and cooking with me. You know I appreciate it when you come and hang out. Don't forget this recipe and others can be found at gdseasoning.com. And I'll see you guys next time.